A long time ago, in a town in Persia, there were two brothers, one named Qasim and the other Ali Baba. Qasim was married to a wealthy wife and lived in plenty, but Ali Baba had to go to the forest and collect wood to support his wife and children. One day, when Ali Baba was in the forest, he saw a large group of men riding towards him. Afraid that they may be robbers, he climbed up a tree and hid there. Ali Baba counted 40 men, and the finest among them he took to be their captain. This man went off into the bushes, and Ali Baba heard him say, "Open sesame." A door appeared in the rocks, and Ali Baba, afraid that the men would see him, remained hiding in the trees. After what seemed a very long time, the men came out, and Ali Baba heard the captain say, "Shut sesame," and they all rode off the way they'd come. Ali Baba climbed down from the tree and went to the bushes. He too said, "Open sesame," and a door flew open, revealing a cave. Inside, there was untold treasure and wealth. Ali Baba started to carry the treasure out to his mules. Ali Baba packed the mules with all they could carry, and then he said, "Shut sesame," and the door closed and he headed for home. Ali Baba returned home with the treasure and showed his wife. He asked her to keep it secret and that they would bury this treasure so no one would know. But Ali Baba's wife wanted to measure it and see how rich they really were. So she went to her sister-in-law, Qasim's wife, to ask for a measure. Qasim's wife was very curious as to why her sister-in-law needed a measure, so she rubbed some suet in the bottom so that anything would stick to it. Her ploy worked. A piece of gold stuck to the measure, and Qasim's wife showed it to her husband. Qasim was so envious that he went directly to his brother and demanded to know where this treasure had come from. Ali Baba told Qasim all about the cave and what he'd seen, and Qasim demanded to know the location of the cave and what words to say to get in. In his greed, Qasim left without Ali Baba and reached the cave first. He said, "Open sesame," and the door opened and shut behind him. Qasim was overcome by all the wealth inside. He packed as much as he could carry, and he was so excited that he forgot the words to open the cave. He tried saying, "Open barley," nothing happened. He tried saying, "Open rice," nothing happened. So he sat down to wait for Ali Baba. Qasim waited and waited, but Ali Baba did not appear. But the thieves returned, and seeing Qasim inside the cave taking their treasure, they grew very angry and killed him. As time passed, Qasim's wife grew very worried that her husband had not returned. Finally, she went to Ali Baba and told him where her husband had gone. Ali Baba said he would go to the cave and look for his brother. And upon reaching the cave, he said the magic words and the door opened, and inside he saw his brother's body. Ali Baba returned to his brother's home with his body, and Qasim's wife cried upon seeing her husband killed, and their slave Morgiana wailed also. But Ali Baba asked Morgiana to pull herself together and go to the apothecary to find some medicine for her master. Morgiana went to the apothecary and told him that her master was very sick and needed some medicine. She returned to the house, and the following day Ali Baba sent her back, where she again asked for medicine. Finally, on the third day, Morgiana returned to the apothecary with the sad news that her master had died. Meanwhile, the thieves returned to their cave and they saw Qasim's body was gone. They realized immediately that someone else must know about their treasure. The captain of the thieves sent his men to town to try and discover who else knew of their treasure. One of the men spoke to the apothecary and heard about Qasim's death and how he had a brother. He thought, this could be who else knows. He returned to report the news to his captain. The captain had all of his men hide in woven baskets, and he pretended that he was an oil merchant and came to Ali Baba's house. Ali Baba, being courteous, asked him to come in and spend the night, and all of the baskets were brought into the compound of his home and left outside around his house. The captain had told his men he would toss pebbles at the baskets to let them know it was time to come out and attack Ali Baba and his family. Unfortunately, Morgiana ran out of oil for her lamp, and she came out to get some. Inside, she saw the men, and so she went back to the kitchen to obtain some poison. Morgiana returned and dropped a little poison into the top of each basket. She killed all 40 of the thieves. Then later, when the captain came out and threw the pebbles, his men did not respond. He came outside to find all of his men were killed. The next morning, Ali Baba awoke and went out to the yard to greet his guests. Seeing that the oil merchant was gone, but all of his wares were still there, he asked Morgiana, "Where did the oil merchant go?" Morgiana said, "Merchant? That man was no merchant. That was the captain of the thieves. I discovered his plot to kill you and your family, and I have taken care of all of his men." Ali Baba was so grateful for Morgiana's help in saving him and his family that he immediately granted her her freedom. He also then took the bodies and buried them in his garden so that no one would discover what had happened. The captain of the thieves returned to his cave, but it was very lonely there without his men, and he began to plot how to get his revenge on Ali Baba. The captain of the thieves came up with a plan to return to Ali Baba disguised as an honorable man. Ali Baba, happy to entertain a guest, threw a great feast where Morgiana danced and entertained the gentleman. But the thief captain was waiting for the right moment to draw his dagger and stab Ali Baba. Morgiana returned to the kitchen where she heard that the fine guest wanted no salt with his food. She thought to herself, only a wicked man would not eat salt with my master. So she returned to the party, again dressed as a dancing girl, with a sword hanging from her belt. And there she saw that the stranger was actually the thief captain, and so she danced close to him and drew her sword and stabbed. Ali Baba cried out, "Morgiana, no!" But it was too late. Then Morgiana turned to her master and said, "Do not fear, I have not ruined you. This man is secretly the captain of the 40 thieves." And she opened his coat and showed Ali Baba the dagger within. Ali Baba was so thankful, he dropped down to his knees and thanked Morgiana for her help. Ali Baba again wished to thank Morgiana for her faithful service, so he offered her in marriage to his son, and a few days later they had a very glamorous wedding. Then Ali Baba returned to the cave to see if the robbers had returned, but seeing that no thieves were there, he knew that it was safe to enter the cave and pack as much of the treasure as he could carry. This he did, and then he returned to his family. Over the years, Ali Baba returned to the cave to get treasure and pay for his family. In time, he told the secret to his son, and eventually that son told his son, and so on. And the children of Ali Baba were rich to the end of their lives.